Greetings. You're listening to Rebels Remembered, featuring Caitlin DeFord and Kelsey DeFord.
Greetings, travelers across the galaxy. I am Caitlin.
I am Kelsey.
And this is Rebels Remembered. And this week we are on Season 3, Episode 15, Trials of the Darksaber. This episode aired January 21st, 2017. Synopsis reads, Sabine begins training with the ancient Darksaber, but in doing so, she must also face her past. This was written by Dave Filoni and directed by Stuart Lee.
Okay, some trivia for this episode. This is pulled from StarWars.com. The working title was called Blade Trials and was originally coupled with Warhead, but both grew into their own episodes. I think we talked about that the last time.
Yeah.
It makes sense for this to be its own episode.
Definitely.
In the outline, Kanan originally sought guidance from Bendu in training Sabine, but this was later changed to Hera, which kept it in the family.
Huh. Interesting.
Yeah. I think that makes more sense.
Yeah.
Because, you know, it had that importance of knowing the person that you're training.
Mm-hmm.
And, Sabine's art in her bunk has been updated with a puffer pig, Lando, Ketsu, Callus, and Zeb. So it's like a shot of her her bedroom or her bunk, and she's sitting there knowing that she's about to get called to this meeting with them.
Yeah.
And it has a little pan down, and yeah, I just love the artwork. It's just so cute.
Yeah, it is adorable.
This is also a rare example of using two-dimensional animation for the illustration of Tar Vizsla's history and the Darksaber. A lot of people, I remember when this came out, they were like, it's the three brothers from Harry Potter.
Oh, I didn't even make that connection.
The film version of Deathly Hallows Part 2, I think it's Part 2.
Yeah.
Where they tell the story of three brothers. It has a similar kind of two-dimensional animation going to it.
Yeah, and I'm just going to jump right into that, because you're listening to somebody who I still have not seen anything to do with the Darksaber or the Clone Wars, so I thought it was interesting. It was a nice way to, okay, you don't know about the Darksaber. Here's a very brief history of this saber, because I didn't know what it was. I knew it was related to Mandalore, but I didn't know anything about it. And it was a very cool way they did it. Like, it wasn't just Fan Rao talking. Or something, Yeah,
it's like a showing us, but also telling us at the same time in a very concise way. Yeah. This episode picks back off of Visions and Voices, when Sabine found the Darksaber, and I knew what it was. I don't think he knew the history of it or anything. And then we have this new knowledge that Kanan's been hanging on to it. She apparently gave it to Kanan and didn't say anything. And of course, Kanan has some knowledge of it, and I don't know, not everything, but he does ask Fenrir, like, what is this? And he knows it has some connection to Mandalore, but I don't know his...
Yeah, I think that was... Kanan was also kind of for the audience perspective. Like, he knows a little bit, but not... And Fenrir was like, oh, here's a brief overlude. Which, you know, that was very helpful for me. So.
Yeah. So Tar Vizsla was the first Mandalorian Jedi who was able to unite Mandalore for a brief period before Mandalore becomes Mandalore and they start their thing and fighting going on. Rao says that if Sabine can wield the Darksaber, she can unite Mandalore and help the rebellion. So there's an interesting thing that happens here in my notes. I think I have it where she basically gets called to this meeting with Fenrir, Kanan, and everybody, asking if she will. Actually, I don't even have to ask her anything. She just walks in and goes, nope, not gonna do what you're about to ask me to do. Yep. But Hera is actually the one that sort of convinces her, because she says they have a need of Mandalorian warriors to lead an attack on Lothal. I was like, that's the first time we've heard that. I'm not sure what she's referencing. I don't know if it's the TIE factory that we've already seen, or the TIE Defender factory. Maybe that's what she's talking about. But yeah, that sort of convinces Sabine to reluctantly train with the thing.
And I like how, I have it in my notes too, Hera was like, believe me, I know how painful family history is, because the stuff that happened with her mother and her father. And I love the way Vanessa Marshall, who plays Hera so great, delivers the line, but if that can help us in the long run, I have to ask you to do it. Like, I hate to ask you with all
of my being.
Yeah. But I have to. But I also love how, this is why I love the Ghost Crew, because they are pretty much the best healthy showing of a family. They don't pressure each other into their feelings. If they need a minute, they can take a minute. They don't pressure her into this. Like, Kanan's like, if you do not want to do this, we're not going to talk about it. Just walk away from it.
But Kanan does say something interesting, and we'll talk about, like, Kanan in this episode in a minute. But he does say something when she walks in, and he says, I don't think it's a coincidence that you found this.
Yeah.
And so I think that's sort of his
Jedi
destiny kind of thing coming out there. But yeah, they don't really, like, pressure her. But Hera's like, I'm going to ask you, which is not demanding. I'm going to ask you.
I'm going to ask you about it. Yeah, which I thought was very, very refreshing. And I love how out of the gate, Fenn Rau is immediately like, Sabine could unify the people. Like, and I love how Fenn Rau is suddenly, because we've seen him grow as a character in the short times we've known him with his relationship to Sabine. And I love how he's like, oh, she can unify the people. And out of the gate, Sabine gives us these little hints that there is a disagreement somewhere with her family. She doesn't go into detail, though, at the beginning of this episode.
Yeah. So she resists at first, but finally agrees to train. They begin training with wooden swords, specifically Sabine and Ezra.
Yeah.
Actually, there's this fight sequence initially with Kanan and her, and then he's like, you're not ready yet. Train with Ezra for a little bit.
Yeah.
So she's very impatient, and Kanan tells Ezra to basically walk her through the basic lightsaber forms.
Yeah.
My question is, why do you think Sabine was so reluctant to accept the Darksaber and train with it? As we sort of find that out in the episode, though.
I think, obviously, initially I wasn't sure. I knew there was something with her family. I just didn't know what, because we kind of get little pieces of it. But she actually says in this episode, I know how to fight. I believe I can wield that saber, but I don't want everything else that comes with it. So she knows if I do this, I'm going to have to confront Mandalore and my family. And that's, which we learn later at the end of the episode, why that it's going to be so difficult for her.
Yeah. So I believe, is this when Kanan talks to Hera later on? Or is it just like a training montage, seems like?
I feel like there's like a little bit of a training montage between her and Ezra.
Yeah, and Ezra, and the whole thing with Ezra and Sabine training, we've all been there, where it's like, I'm trying to learn something, and this person already knows how to do it. He's not being an but he's like, very like eager to like, look what I can do. You can do this, and I'll help you out, and it's gonna be great. Which can become annoying to some people.
Yeah, and especially with Sabine. I mean, you gotta look at her too. She is Mandalorian, and she knows her stuff. Like, she's not just somebody who doesn't know what she's doing. And I feel like, I think we touch on it a little bit in this episode, like Kanan's reluctance to train her with the actual saber. I feel like that fuels into her, like, wow, well, like, I agree with what Hera said, like, she's not going to take it seriously when she doesn't feel like you're taking it seriously.
Yeah, that's one thing I was going to say, too, is also, like, why a lot of people were, like, hating on Kanan, like, why is he being so reluctant with Sabine not giving her... And for me, I think we talked about this off-pod when we discussed the episode, and I said I would have liked to see his more reluctance a little bit more early on, because it almost kind of pops up out of nowhere.
Yeah, true.
In the middle of the episode. But I think, one, where Kanan has gone wrong is he's tried to train her like a Jedi. He's tried to train her like Ezra. You can't do that.
Right.
She's not Ezra. And he learns that very quickly. Like, this is frustrating. She's not Ezra. Like, Ezra is very eager to train, sometimes too eager. She doesn't really want that, but also a part... that he didn't, I mean, I touched upon a little bit, is when Hera's like, well, were you this cautious with Ezra? I think that's an important question to ask, because this isn't just, I'm going to teach you how to use a blade. This is, I'm going to teach you how to use a blade that someone is going to challenge you for, and you may die in that duel.
That's true.
I think about that. That's also, like, I thought, sat for a minute, it's like, it's also, like, he doesn't want her to get hurt. He's, like, trying to protect her.
Yeah.
And when I went back and watched Rebels Recon, I think Henry Gilroy brought up that, it's about letting go, and realizing that she's grown up. If she's made this decision, as half-heartedly as it may be, you have to sort of let go and...
Oh, I didn't even think of it that way, and that's the thing that Hera touched on, too. Like, were you this careful with Ezra? I'm like, actually, if you think about it, he was. He was very, very reluctant to train Ezra.
Because of his own
Oh, that's true. That's true.
Not really much as worry about him. He did worry about him later, down the road, but it was more of his doubting himself. This is like
doubting her in a way.
In a way, like you can say all day long he believes in her, but like you said, if you're that reluctant, it's
that's true.
You know, how is Sabine gonna see that?
Yeah, I didn't think about that. Yeah, it's a good point. And I love how there's a moment where Fenrir just pops in to give him supplies, and I remember this moment going, "What are you doing here?" Like, and I feel like Sabine was like, I think she said something like, "Oh, great, more help."
Yeah.
And he gives her the some kind of, she calls them something, those little bracelet thingies,
some kind of gauntlet type deal,
something like that. Yeah, and excuse me, I love how she uses them on Ezra, and it shows this split, not really a split, but like she is Mandalorian. Mm-hmm. She is not a Jedi. She is not force sensitive like Ezra. She is full on Mandalorian. So there's a split between it. You see it with Kanan.
Yeah,
he's kind of like, wait a minute.
That was my question. Is like, dude, you saw her have them on.
That's true.
Why didn't you take them off then? No, you waited until she got mad enough to wrap you in this rope thing, where you're like,
yeah,
I don't know. Sorry, you were gonna say.
It was just interesting showing the comparison between, you know, Kanan is still coming from a Jedi perspective, and then you have Fenrir coming in with his Mandalorian stuff. I thought it was kind of interesting.
Yeah, and I think there's a reason there are rarely any Mandalorian Jedi.
Yeah.
I could be wrong about that, but it doesn't seem like there's a whole lot of Jedi for Mandalore. But you could also argue, like, back in the old days, Jedi younglings maybe didn't know where they came from, you know?
True.
They were
That's
babies.
True.
So she gets, of course, frustrated and wraps Kanan in that little, I don't know what you call it, some sort of rope of some kind. He cuts it with a lightsaber, and he's like, "Is this a game to you?" And then, of course, you have them both mad at each other. When he's like, history lesson, the Jedi won against Mandalore, or, you know, whatever. Of course, she basically storms off, and calls Kanan a lousy teacher, which...
Yeah, and that's something I would like to touch upon with you, because people that on the pod don't know this, but you did some student teaching in your internship in college. And I just I have a question about, like, if you were Kanan, so put yourself in Kanan's shoes, I guess. Have you had a moment where you recognize that, because they'll tell you anybody you teach is different and reacts to different teaching stimuli, whatever it is. What do you think is the difference between Ezra and Sabine in teaching them?
Ooh, that's interesting. I think one thing is, as a teacher, you're going to fail. That's going to happen. I don't think it's... Kanan sort of gotten rid of that doubt of failing on himself, but it's a matter of... Ezra, again, was very eager.
Yeah.
And teachers, we love that. We love people who's eager to learn. They're ready to go, learn something new. That's awesome. 90% of the time, that's not the kids that you, or students that you teach.
Yeah.
You choose people that are, you know, I'm here because I have to be, I'm very reluctant, or I'm very apathetic. I don't really care about what you're teaching me. But for Ezra specifically, he's very eager. He learns more by doing.
Yeah.
Than, you know, maybe sitting in a lecture hall, listening to Jedi philosophy, whatever. Sabine is very impulsive.
Yeah.
But also, he's not respecting where she comes from, because she's not being open with him enough.
That's true, yeah.
When you're teaching, you know, kids, young adults, whatever, you have to be respectful and be mindful of their culture, their backgrounds, where they come from. That's going to affect them in a classroom setting. So, yeah, I've had days where I go and teach a lesson and go, that completely did not work. And we need to assess and figure out, why am I not reaching this particular student? And it's, like I said, he went into it going, I'm going to train her like I trained Ezra. Kind of.
Yeah.
But not really. Because I don't want her to get hurt.
Yeah.
Okay, well, like we just talked about the self-doubt and stuff, but that he is planning in Sabine, whether he knows that or not.
That's true.
By doing that. But every person is different. Every person learns differently. And that's when, I think, when Hera opened it up to...
Yeah.
She's not opening up to you because she doesn't want you to see her be vulnerable. being Mandalorian, that she doesn't want to, like, when she has that heart to heart with Ezra, I don't want to talk about this. They don't. They're very supposed to be headstrong, push forward, move forward and things.
Yeah, I just think, sorry, that was like a lot of nuggets of wisdom there.
Another thing is, Kanan is already used to changing his teaching philosophies.
That's true.
He's had to do it with Ezra. Initially, I think back in season 1 where he says, well, you learn best on your feet, so we're going to make this into a lesson. On a mission, not just them chilling, I'm going to show you how to do it. Like, no, there's a mission in mind, and you're going to learn right now, in this moment.
Yeah.
So he has experience adjusting.
Yeah. I think you're right. I think going to Hera, and she has a line that makes me think if Hera knows more than anybody on the crew about Sabine's past. She says, remember how hard it was for her to trust us. And we saw that as an audience. But I don't know. I have like a, what do you call it? It's not actually canon. But
Headcanon?
Headcanon. I really feel like Hera knows more about her past than Kanan or Ezra or Zeb.
Well, she says us when she came to us. So does Kanan have the same knowledge? I
don't know. I just, for some reason, I feel like Hera would know more. I don't know why. Sorry, going off about vulnerability. So, to me, this is the best Sabine episode in Rebels.
I agree.
Because, Tia Sircar, who voices her beautifully, I've been listening to her and Taylor and Vanessa on Potter Rebellion. Shout out to Potter Rebellion. And she talks about Sabine, like, not wanting to be vulnerable until moments like this episode. And I think seeing her, someone so strong, break down at the end, it kills me every time. Because,
yeah, plus Tia's delivery of that as well.
Yeah, and I heard it was just her and Freddie in the booth for that scene. Just them two. Which I think is why it played so well, because it felt like it was just them in that moment. But it's just, being vulnerable is the strongest you can be. If you think of it that way, because I feel like so many people are like, I don't want to be seen as weak.
Yeah.
Actually, when you're being vulnerable, that takes more strength.
Yeah.
Than to stuff it down somewhere.
And I think Sabine does learn that lesson. But it takes Kanan not being not mean, but just pushing her to confront. Like, I know you got something bothering you, and it's holding you back. And you need to confront it. Whether you're ready to confront it or not, it's not important. But there are bigger things, like with the Darksaber and Mandalore and all that. You have, like, sort of like Hera said, I'm asking you to do this because it'll help things in the long run. Yeah,
and by the time we get to the scene between just Kanan and her, where they both admit that they both apologize to each other, which was nice. That scene is so... Like, the music is so good.
Kevin Conner's music is... Like, he wrote, like, a theme for Sabine, I assume?
Yes, he did.
Yeah. It was really good music.
The lighting was great, and then you get to... Seeing Kanan, like you said, we've already seen him switch his approach with Ezra, but when he hands her the saber and he ignites his, or whatever, his teaching method is already changed at this moment. So, okay, here's the blades... here's the energy between them, like all that type of stuff.
Yeah, and also something important that he says is you must use all of your skills together. When earlier it was, no, you have to do it this way, very rigid. Yeah, no Mandalorian weapons involved. You can't do that. And so I think, again, accepting that culture and that background as well.
Yeah, that's true.
In training her. But also, Kanan's stances, man. One hand behind the back. I gotta give props to the guy. That is still blind, by the way.
Yeah, still blind, dude. Yeah. I noticed that, too. Like, that is not how we saw him in season 1.
Kanan encourages her to face her fears. Through combat, she reveals her guilt for making weapons for the Empire, seeing them used against our people. When she speaks out, her family doesn't stand with her against the Empire, and she has been shut out.
This is like, I think we talked about this off pod, this was like, for the audience, when I first watched this, I was like, oh wow, oh boob, 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 and it was just like, a constant, like, oh that's bad, oh that's really bad, and then it was like, after all of that, when she said that when I did, they still didn't stand with me. That is so freaking heartbreaking. That is so sad.
Yeah, I mean, she says, the line is like, one of the lines is I built weapons that helped enslave my people. Boom, that drops.
Yeah.
I mean, that was a big one for me, but also but when I did pause, they didn't stand with me. Which, when I'm not gonna lie, when I heard that, I was like, your family sided with the Empire, even though they are using a weapon to subjugate them? Like,
it's kind of like what, I agree with what Kanan says afterwards. He says, your family is in a prison. One of their own making, but still a prison.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
I don't know if they recognize the repercussions of siding with the Empire, or if they felt like they had no choice. I can't remember, but I know we're going to get to it in the next episode.
I think fear is a big part of it.
Yes.
But still, I would have difficulty, of course, Mandalorians, like, that's all you know, is you have such innate loyalty to this one place, these one people. It's hard for you to be like, I'm gonna leave. Bye.
Yeah.
I understand that's difficult, but yeah, the fact that they didn't side with hers, I still don't remember why. I would have to look at it in season 4. But
well, I mean, the next episode we're gonna meet her family.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
So we're gonna get to hear from their side. But yeah, initially I was like, what is their problem? Like, yeah. What? I don't understand. But
which it explains a lot. So my question was, how does Sabine's emotional breakthrough during training reflect her own inner struggles? What I was gonna say is, this explains a lot, because she was not trusting Hera initially in season 1.
No.
Because her own family did not side with her.
Yeah.
That's layers upon layers of, I don't trust anybody now.
Well, you also have to think this way too. She was she was a cadet.
Yeah, with the Empire, and they didn't tell you what you were building here?
So she lost her trust with them, and then she lost trust with her own family. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm gonna have trust issues. Like,
so Sabine is unsure why Mandalore would follow her, but Fenrir, Ezra, and Kanan, agree, like, we'll help you out.
That moment.
And this line from Kanan, this family will stand by you no matter what you choose, is so, I love it so much. So my question for you is, why is the concept of found family important to Rebels? Oh, you're already crying. I'm sorry.
I don't know what happened. Sorry, I don't know what happened. Well, like I just said earlier at the beginning of the recording, it is so freaking healthy. And I never really thought about it until listening to Part of Rebellion and them talk about the dynamic between the family. It is so healthy. And the fact that these people aren't even blood related to each other speaks volumes for people. And I know there's so many... Why am I crying? My God. There's so many Rebels fans, particularly out there, that, for whatever reason, have lost touch with their family. Whether it was political differences, whatever, religious differences, any differences you could think of, or mistrust, problems, family issues, whatever.
Toxicity.
Yeah, whatever it may be. So many people have found family in community of Star Wars, and it's crazy. Like, it was on Twitter one day, and you won't believe the community that people feel from people they don't even know, or they're not even related to. And that, not just apply that to the fandom, but like in life, I'm closer to some people than I am of. No, this is actually a fact. I am closer to people that are not blood related to me. Mm-hmm. Besides you and Dad and Kylie, our other sister. I mean, I have a friend I've been with for almost 20 years now, who I consider family, but they are not blood related to me. And I think, not just this applies to Rebels, found family exists in every facet, I think, of Star Wars. Mm-hmm. Sorry.
I like that line, because it is so true, not to just this story, but in realistic earthly world, that we have going on. That the concept of found family is very important to a lot of people. Yeah, so what is your rating on this episode?
I gave it an 8 out of 10. Animation, visuals, and the music, exclamation point, were a thing for me, but also finally getting more background. Like, this is the background of Sabine for me. Like, this is a pivotal moment for her character, and I love that.
And also, I will say I give it an 8 out of 10 as well. And just, like, even though it is a training episode, it's not really an action-packed thing. Yeah. It's very emotional. And what I love about Dave's writing is his dialogue. Yes. There's so many, like, zingers in this episode. Like, the one we just said about family. The one I liked that Kanan says, "You're not fighting me, you're fighting yourself and losing," is one of my favorite ones. And then the other one that Ezra has during he tries to talk to Sabine, and she says she doesn't, like, want to talk about it because it brings up memories of her family. And then he says, "At least you have parents to go back to," which kind of, like, again, grass is always greener. You never really know.
That's true. That's true. Yeah.
So a lot of those little dialogue moments. The music is good. And yeah, we do get a lot of more information about Sabine that we didn't previously have. So, now that we've had our emotional moment, I've got something, an activity called Saber Session. Okay. These are hot takes from the episode. So they're meant to cause us to be not controversial, but maybe some disagreement. So, okay. Alright, first hot take, which we're going to disagree on.
Yeah, probably.
First hot take. Kanan failed as a teacher in this episode.
So I have to do agree or disagree?
Agree or disagree. Or you can be in the middle.
Initially, yeah, I think you did.
Yeah, looks like what I said is you go into it with a very rigid sort of, I trained Ezra this way, so ergo I'm going to train you sort of the similar way.
But not the same way? Yeah, I don't know. Yeah.
Next hot take. Ezra was more emotionally intelligent than Kanan.
I feel like Kanan was more emotionally intelligent than Ezra. Ezra knew something was bothering her, but this is going to sound so mean. He's not the teacher. You know what I'm saying?
Well, I also think, like, Ezra is sort of like, I'm just here to teach you, to be the teacher's assistant, kind of way. I think you're right. He knew something was bothering her, but when he tried to talk to her, and she was still very... Yeah. Only Kanan was the one that was able to get her to explain what was going on in her head.
Yeah, so. Even... He did egg her on, not gonna lie there. Yeah. He did egg her on to reveal it, but... Yeah, not saying that Ezra isn't emotionally intelligent here, but I feel like Kanan had a little bit more insight.
Mm-hmm. Next hot take. Sabine should not have been trained with the Darksaber.
I'm going to disagree on that one, but I think she was needed.
Okay. I just don't know, because I know that she doesn't lead Mandalore, spoiler alert. Mm-hmm. She doesn't unite in a way, I guess she kind of does,
I guess.
But, I don't know, I just felt like, why did she... Other than, like you said, to confront her own issues. Yeah, to confront her own issues, yeah. So I'm kind of in the middle on that one. Sabine is more worthy of the Darksaber than most Mandalorians.
Ooh, I love Sabine. More worthy. Personally, I think she is, but at the same time, she's still very hesitant, even when she does have it.
That's true.
But what is worth? We could talk about that.
It's interesting, though, because most of the time this saber, historically, has been used just to grab power and seize it.
Yes.
It's not about the greater good of Mandalore, usually. It's about power. It's a power thing. So I always am one of those people, in my philosophy, is that the people that don't want the power are the ones that should be leading. Yeah. Because they will be less corrupted. Oh. But... That's just I know whether she's more worthy than all of other Mandalorians, I don't know if I can answer that, because, as we said in our last episodes, there's only a handful of Mandalorians.
Yeah, there's a lot of them, so, yeah.
The Darksaber is more powerful as a symbol than as a weapon.
Ooh, I don't know, because the way Kanan said it's old, and it's aged, tells me it can be powerful as a weapon, too. So I'm going to be in the middle on that one.
Yeah, I can see both, like, a symbol, because it does have this history of uniting people, but also, like you said, they never actually said what it's made out of.
I know.
And I know that initially it was not going to be a saber, but I think in the Clone Wars, George was like, a lightsaber is going to beat everything. Like, it has to be a saber.
Saber, yeah.
I know it's got to be some sort of synthetic crystal.
Whatever it is, yeah.
But yeah, that definitely... speaks to its strength as being built by a Mandalorian Jedi, I assume.
Yeah.
So. Okay. Next one. This is one of the most emotionally mature episodes in all of Star Wars Rebels.
I'm gonna go agree on that one.
I'm gonna agree on that one, too. Maybe not the most, but mature, but it's up there.
Yeah, it is up there.
Yeah. The episode proves that Jedi training methods are flawed for non-Jedi.
Ooh, you're gonna get me right in the Jedi teachings. Flawed for non-Jedi. I'm gonna let you answer this one. What do you think?
I think there are aspects, and I don't want to, be burned over the coals for this, but I think there are aspects of some Jedi teachings that are just too rigid.
Okay.
For someone who is not, I'm specifically talking about the Old Republic.
Yeah, okay.
Days. It's very rigid for someone who's not born and grown into that world, I guess, of being a monk, essentially, that fights.
I guess I'm just so well, why can't it work for everybody? I'm not that person. I hate to be that person because I just said everybody's taught differently.
Yeah.
But I don't know. This episode proves that Jedi training methods are flawed for non-Jedi. I'm gonna go with disagree on that one for some reason. Something's telling me to disagree.
Well, again, I didn't specify exactly what training methods it's talking about.
Okay.
But I mean, you could argue that the forms that Kanan was teaching her with, the 1 through 6 count, is technically could be a Jedi thing. So it seemed to be working. So I think I'm just talking more about some of the philosophies of it. Maybe.
Oh, okay, yeah, I can see, because you're talking about the religious aspects of it. Yeah, I could see that.
All right, final hot take. I don't know how long we're going to talk about this one. Sabine was showing signs of Force sensitivity in this episode before Ahsoka. So, I don't know if anyone's watching out there knows the Ahsoka series that came out after Rebels, where it was written that Sabine is Force sensitive and is being trained by Ahsoka. And she also has, spoiler alert, Ezra's lightsaber.
I saw no signs. Of Force sensitivity from her in this episode. I am sorry. There is none. She's Mandalorian. Now, I'm not saying you can get this whole debate, which we're not going into on this pod, about who is Force sensitive, and everybody can be a Jedi. And I'm like, no, not really. Sorry. That's just how I feel. No, she was not showing Force sensitivity, at least in my opinion.
I agree. I think I wrote it down where Hera, was talking to Kanan, and she says, "Are you holding back because she's not a Jedi?"
Oh, yeah.
And he responds with one of the lines that he says is, "Anyone can be proficient with a lightsaber or a blade, but not fight like a Jedi."
Yes.
Anyone can pick up a sword and be trained to use a sword.
Yes.
But connecting with the blade, which he does tell her she does, people are picking that, oh, he said she connected with the blade, she's gotta be Force sensitive. No, I think that's just innate in sword fighting. It's an extension of yourself.
Yes.
Now, being a Jedi, you can more directly connect with the energy around you and what you have in your hands.
Yes.
So you're gonna fight differently because
more
you're
in tune with it.
More tuned with it, yeah. But yeah, that was my take. I was like, we're not gonna get into that, but
no.
I'm so tired of people saying, go back and watch Rebels, Sabine is Force sensitive. And I'm sorry, but what I witnessed, and what you witnessed might be completely different things, but what I witnessed is, I didn't see any Force sensitivity.
No, and that's...
at all.
She doesn't need to be.
Right?
We're not gonna get in that argument. But to me, she doesn't need to be. Not everybody has to be a Jedi, and not everybody has to be Force sensitive. Anyway.
Mic drop.